This reading is from Matthew 25. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you, a stranger, invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.
Thank you, Bruce. A lot of the time when I'm here, I talk about ideas and all that sort of stuff, what we might do. If you want to grab some chairs, a couple of seats here if you want to come round. Yes, I talk about ideas. Today, I want to talk about something a bit more practical today. I want to talk about something that we do here called the Loneliness Project. And some of you will know that we initiated the Loneliness Project here at the chapel. It arose out of a desire for us as the Aspen Chapel to make a difference in the valley. For the chapel has to really have something to be able to work on and advocate around rather than just coming up with great ideas and noodling and, meditating and all that sort of business. There has to be something that we're actually doing. And we had a look around and we thought, what area do we want to work in? And we decided the area we wanted to work in was around the area of sort of mental health, and particularly around the area of loneliness. Eric Fromm, in his book, The Art of Loving, said, the greatest driver of mental health problems is loneliness. And, just talking locally in a recent Pitkin County survey, they had 587 people that filled in this particular survey. 10% of respondents said they'd considered suicide in the past year. That's 10% in the valley. 11% said that a loved one had considered the idea. And 2% said they'd actually attempted suicide. 11% said they'd lost a loved one to suicide in the past year. And the vast majority said that, the people that filled in, said that they felt excluded. So we've got a pretty high suicide rate in the valley. And on top of that, I think nearly 25% of us, have some contact with mental illness. Just over 4% of us have depression. And we all know that addiction recovery are really prevalent. And, there's a drug problem around and, in our schools. And there are issues that really need to be dealt with. And much of it, I think, is down to loneliness. We always think about loneliness as being about them who were lonely. But, a lot of us also feel lonely. Those of us who have come from afar, I myself, came from England. It's difficult to make friends in the valley. I had a group of people, I had a group of professionals, got some mental health professionals to come and talk about loneliness a while ago, and we were sitting in the room together. And we were all talking very professional about our clients and, how they were lonely and things like that. And one of them stood up suddenly and said, look, I've been in the valley for 2 years, and I feel lonely at the moment. And, it totally transformed the room. And everybody stood up and spoke about their experience of loneliness. And it's not they feel that. All of us at some point, even in marriages, we feel lonely to some extent. And being a big resort area, there's a seasonal nature to social connection. Someone once said, when the lifts stop running, the friendships also stop. And this is exacerbated by, still the effects of the pandemic, and by the influx of new money forcing up rents and making, generally life less affordable and people having to move out, going down valley where they probably don't know as many people, haven't got many people around them. We all know loneliness, and yet it's very difficult to do anything about it. People who are lonely often crave human contact, but their state of mind makes it difficult to form connections with others. So, in the Loneliness Project, our mission really is to lessen the stigma around loneliness by talking about it. I'm actually performing the sort of intention of the Loneliness Project just by having this conversation right now, to actually bring up the subject, which is not often brought up. So we want to create understanding around loneliness and come up with practical solutions to deal with the issues involved. And, we have done a few practical things over the past year. We organised a couple of community meals for the J1 visitors who are working on the mountains, the lift operators and the ski instructors. We had them come to a Christmas meal, and then we had them come to a leap year meal in the Christmas in the spring. And also yesterday, we had a fantastic event for those affected by Alzheimer's, which again does create loneliness. We had about 50 people. We had Rebecca Chop talking about the subject of loneliness. So, we have done a few things. An area where loneliness occurs both in those who have the disease and, in family members close to them. Alzheimer's does produce that. We've also created partnerships here at the chapel. We asked people to become partners of the Loneliness Project, and the Roaring Fork Leadership, Aspen Family Connections, Headquarters, Mind Springs, the Hope Centre, Pathfinders, Senior Citizen Centre, the Community Church, and the Kind Neighbour Project all came around and started to become our partners. The whole idea being to reduce that stigma around loneliness and enable people to communicate their struggles and therefore to get help. And interesting enough, when we first started, people said, you mustn't call it the Loneliness Project, because no one wants to have anything to do with it, if you call it the Loneliness Project. And, I was fairly clear that we need to get that word out there and actually use the word. And, funny enough, since then, we've got a thing on our website about it. I get phone calls from people saying, I feel lonely. Is there anything, you can help in this situation? So we've set up a sort of mini buddy program where we've got people who volunteered to be friends with these people, and we buddied people up, and people now go around and visit, so we do have the opportunity, if people do self-identify as lonely, to actually do something about it. We have a team of people. So this is our project as the chapel, our initiative. And about this time last year, we decided to take it on. And I think that one of the reasons was because not only did we recognize that this was something that was important in our valley, being a ski resort, but also we recognized that to some extent, as I said, we're all lonely. And I think each one of us, no matter how we come across to the world, feels that aloneness. You're born alone, you're going to die alone, and to some extent, aloneness does follow us through our lives. And I think all of that reasoning for putting together this project is still true a year on. And the reason I'm saying this is that I'd like to see this project develop. Up to now, I think it's been a typical church thing. And the typical church thing is where the church thinks, yes, this is a really good idea. We're going to do the Loneliness Project. We all vote that the Loneliness Project is something we do. Okay, vicar, now you go off and do it. And so, I get left with, right, what do I do to make the Loneliness Project happen? The minister then has to go on and deal with it. And I think, I've made a good start. We've got these partners. I've done talks around Aspen. There's some publicity. We've got a logo. We've got a website. One of the things that we wanted to do is to create events that people who are on their own can come to. And, we've started to do that as well. We've created those meals, but also we're creating, if you look in your brochure, bulletin, I'll come back to it, we're creating a Sacred Cinema series in the fall, which is free cinema. We've got a nice screen, we've got a big projector. So we're going to show films here at the chapel over the fall, where we can invite people to come to, and there'll be wine, and it's free, and all that sort of business. We've got a sponsor who's paid for it all. So, ideas to come together to do that, so that we have things that people can do. So relating this project, I am looking for people, which is you lot and you lot online, to do a number of things. This is what I'm looking for people to do. First of all, I'm looking for you to communicate. All of us has opportunities to communicate about the subject of loneliness and bring it up at dinner parties, book clubs, choirs, events, things that we participate in. You know, people don't want to talk about it, but you can initiate conversation. And one thing everyone can do is talk about their own feelings about loneliness. You know, we all have them. It doesn't cost anything to start a conversation, and we can all do that, and each of us can be a part of that initiative. I'm hoping that actually, you know, people will do that when you go out. Also, I'd like people to come forward to form some sort of organizing group around us. It can't just be me doing this. And if it is something that is close to your heart, it would be great to get a lay chair, someone who's not the minister, and a team of people to come up with ideas and events that we could run with. You know, we've got a logo, we're known in the valley, and I think it needs to be taken to that next level. I'm going to England for the next 3 weeks, so there's a great opportunity. There will be a vacuum in my office. I've warned Peggy that there's going to be a load of people ringing up saying they want to organize events for the Loneliness Project. So here is an opportunity for people to get together. Bruce is on board with this as well. To get together. Now, you're on board. You are on board with this, aren't you? Bruce, I'm going to tell you one thing. Bruce is not organizing anything. But he is on board with it. So he'll go, yes, please organize this. And so I hope by the time I get back, there'll be a great groundswell of initiative. It'd be good to have some other ideas for initiatives that we could develop around. So, you know, we've been doing this now for a year. And I think it takes, you know, time to initiate things. You know, we've created that first phase of the project. You know, and I think something needs to happen to take it to a new level. And for that to happen, it'll take a community to do that rather than just me. You know, we all have that desire, fun enough, to create community. One of the reasons people come to church is to create community. That's why we're here. And at its core, the Loneliness Project is about creating community. Just inviting someone to church with you is doing that. Everyone comes here once for the first time, and if you like it, you stay. Church is the one last remaining community builders in society. I mean, you've got sports clubs and schools and things like that, but when you look out into society, there are very few organizations that are specifically there to build community. We exist just to be a community that comes together to support each other, and as such, our very existence speaks to this project. You know, so think of people who might be feeling alone, not involved with others, but wanting to be, and invite them either to come to Sunday or to one of the events we're doing. And the great thing is you're one step removed. You're not inviting them to your home. You're inviting them to somewhere else. So if people don't like it, you can say, yeah, I know. You know, it's not you. You don't have to take responsibility for it. And I do think we have something valuable here if we put it into practice. And I had Bruce read that reading because it really just put the finger on why we should be doing this. I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? And the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters, you did for me. That is what this initiative is about, doing something for others that can make a difference. And I'd like to see us come together around this and use it to develop the community that we have here and give others who are not part of such a community the benefit of being involved. Let's do it both for ourselves and for those around us that could do with a bit of help to join in with others. And, it doesn't really matter asking people. My mother always had a famous phrase that she always used to use in our family. Some of us do, and some of us don't. But all of us like to be asked. Thank you. Barbara. Okay, so we do have always in the service an opportunity for anybody to say anything they want to, make a contribution, to share, ask a question, or disagree with anything that I've said. So it's always all right if nobody does, but I just want to give an opportunity for anybody to say anything if they want to around what we've been talking about today. Thank you, yes.
Along the lines of what you've been discussing, I've been in the first responder and EMS world for 30 years, and that community is finally bringing into light the struggles that people have with PTSD and loneliness and things like that. And anyway, the ski company and ABH, everyone's doing a great job, the Hope Center. And I just was thinking, one thing we've started doing is just checking in on each other after a bad call or something. And so that's another thing you can do with, with your new initiative, is just check in on people that you haven't heard from for a while, or maybe acting strange or whatever. Yeah,
that is a good idea. Yes, I think checking in on people is fantastic. If you haven't seen, occasionally if I haven't seen one of you for a while, I might give you a phone call and say, are you okay? Which doesn't mean, why haven't you been to the chapel? It means generally, are you okay? I think it's a good thing. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Yeah, first responders definitely somewhere we should be aware of. And Bruce, yes, thank you.
Well, I liked your suggestion of trying to communicate. In other words, let's bring it out of the closet and talk about loneliness. And since the Surgeon General said, "Oh, we have an epidemic," you see, in the media, people trying to figure out what are the root causes of the statistical symptoms. In other words, 526 people in the valley and X percent, those are all symptoms. And what are the root causes, both generally, in other words, our modern society has a lot of disconnects with our evolutionary brains, but every person is doing their own path, and they have their own problems and issues. So this morning, coincidentally, in the New York Times, there was in the op-ed, there was a wonderful article on loneliness that I recommend. If anybody can't get past the paywall, you can just email me, bruce@merrifield.com, and I'll copy and paste it and send it to you. And the comments are actually worth reading. It's brought a sort of an avalanche of perspectives, if you will. So there are general issues and general solutions, but then there are a lot of individual, challenges.
Yeah, I think it's a really rich subject for us to be engaging with. It's fantastic. It's right on the money in terms of what our purpose is in life here. So yeah, and you do look out for those articles. They're great. Yes, John. Good to have you, John and Susan, in from Texas. They're always watching online. Lovely to have you with us in person.
Thank you. I guess I just wanted to talk about the notion that loneliness permeates up and down our society. I think a lot of people believe that someone like yourself, for example, couldn't be lonely because you're surrounded with people all day long. During my professional career, I was surrounded by people all day long, every week, by the year, but it was a lonely time for me. And so I guess I just want to make the point that loneliness is not some little old man or lady sitting in a corner somewhere. It's a much broader problem.
Yeah.
And we've got to be aware that it runs up and down and sideways for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, that often we're around people, but that deep connection that we have is so important to us as human beings. We don't often make that deep connection. We make shallow connections, but it's the depth that we want. So yeah, thank you for that. Anybody else? Yes, Andy.
First of all, Barbara, beautiful song. Thank you so much for singing that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the loneliness starts, with yourself. And I've been reflecting recently about, empathy and forgiveness for yourself. And if you start there, that might open you up a little bit toward connecting with other people. It is a problem, and we need to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Andy. Mimi, I'm coming to you. Thank you.
I don't know if I can say this succinctly, but part of the perennial philosophy and something that Einstein said is that we all suffer because we think we're separate.
Because we think they're separate. Yes.
Separate.
Yeah, yeah,
But and that's part of being lonely.
yeah.
But indeed, we aren't. We're all part of this amazing cosmos. We're all filled with the divine. And when we can find that connection, it alleviates some of that loneliness. And so it's connecting with our own inner selves, it's connecting with other people, and it's connecting with the divine that's already in us. And I think that's part of what the chapel does.
Yeah. Thank you, Mimi. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? Yes. There we are. Fantastic.
I wanted to share something that's happening at our school where we get the opportunity to have speakers come. We have an author by the name of David Brooks coming, I think, this week. And take a look at his story. I just read the first chapter of his book, and it's called How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. And I think this ties in beautifully with what we're trying to do here. And that's, I think the idea the school has is, for teenagers and for parents and for the whole community. So take a look at this book by David Brooks. We're looking at, he's got YouTube videos and all kinds of things, but I do think when you're sitting here thinking, well, how do we do this? I think this book can be supportive to that.
And it's also good to welcome the Esposito family. You might remember from Easter, though, we had the confirmations, but lovely to have you in from Denver. Fantastic, thank you. We get a little round of applause for the Espositos, I think. Good. Anybody else like to make a few comments?